I'll be fair.
Smile, babe. Come on.
You're doing great, sweetie.
Our momenters at the front.
Yeah, one more. There we go.
Oh my god, we're live.
We're live. Okay, hi guys, welcome. So we are going to talk a little bit about nutrition. I feel like nutrition is, it's so complex. It's quite a touchy subject, I think, for women in general in regards to diet culture. And I called it a nutrition talk to enhance your well-being and your training. Could have totally done a clickbaity, like, nutrition for fat loss. I think I didn't want to do that, or nutrition for health. The reason I didn't want to say the word health is because health, I think, can have a negative connotation. I think we attach to this idea of what health is, and it's different for everybody. And when I say well-being, for me that feels a little bit more wholesome, a little bit more well-rounded, because and dependent on your season of your life as well, your well-being will look different. So we're going to talk about your nutrition in terms of enhancing your well-being and training, which when that's down and you've got that like embedded, because there's a lot of unlearning to do of what we think that looks like. When that's down, whatever your goal is, if you do have aesthetic goals, which again, we just want to say, we're not against aesthetic goals, we're not against fat loss, we're not against body composition changes, we're against diet culture, and we're against the systems you would have to build in order to get that if you sacrifice your soul. That's what we're against. So we really want to encourage ways that you can look after your well-being and your training, and then when you've got that down, make really informed decisions about what your goals are, and then stuff will be a lot easier from then. So we kind of thought we'd kick off in terms of nutrition regarding struggles and what people find to be the hardest thing about nutrition. So we're going to host. We will throw out some questions to our lovely coaches, and then at the end we will do a Q&A, and you can ask us anything you want as well, and hopefully give you some take-homes on how to eat for your soul, mind and body, basically. So, Catty. Hi. You're right there?
In her voice note, she was like, so guys, this is Catty. I'm Danny, this is Catty. No.
Yeah, I was literally practicing my intro. I don't think I said anything that I said in my intro. So tell me what you feel, well, what was your struggle mostly with nutrition growing up and up until today?
Yeah. So we discussed this at length because we were like, for me, my struggle was always, I really wanted to get where I wanted to go. Everyone does, but like you would read 10 different things and then be like, hang on a minute. And we will talk about it more, but it is simplicity is key, and it sounds so boring and basic. But the biggest thing I struggled with was I tracked for so long that when I came off tracking, I really hadn't realized how long I tracked for. Mm-hmm. So coming off it, I then was like, oh my God, what do I do? Like, where do I
Can I ask why you
go?
started tracking?
I don't even remember. I guess just because I think I started meal plan. Oh yeah, we discussed this as well. Kyla thingy's meal plan. And then you were like, okay, cool, I can follow a meal plan. And then I was like, okay, I've done that. Didn't stick to it. How about tracking? And I think it was like, at first it was like, understanding, and then you lose sight of that you're using it for understanding, so then you use it as like a metric of, has my day gone really well? Have I stuck to it? Have I not stuck to it? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, for me the biggest struggle was coming off tracking for years, living life normally with just out anything, and then still kind of being somewhere in the middle.
So do you feel like, because I think for me that the struggle was thinking that health was being smaller, right? And therefore trying to eat in that way so that I wouldn't get bigger and or I could lose weight, and thinking that was health, and then really trying to stick to that. But like you said, having 10 different opinions, like it being so complicated, I feel like we've been taught for it to be complicated. Like I think that's the, give them all this information, make them feel fucking shit, like what not to do, so that we buy into a load of stuff. And therefore, did you feel like you lost track of actually listening to your wants and needs for your body, because you were just trying to do a process?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like we were saying when we were talking, like I think I very much was like, okay, I could follow a meal plan, or I could stick at X amount of things in a tracker. But when it was like going out and doing the thing afterwards, like understanding what I needed in relation to my training, or what I needed in order to get to my next goal. I just didn't have any of that education. Like I would read all these posts on social media, I would like try this thing, and then none of that stuff was sticking.
Did you ever, I think this is an important question, did you ever eat before now, because I'm guessing not, but did you ever eat without a goal? Like what about just enjoying food?
Yeah, I will, like we said, because I very much, my cue for stopping to eat is that I like to be full at the end of a meal. So if I'm not full, I really struggle with being like, right, well, I need something more. And that's not even just saying like nutritionally dense foods. That's like, because you were saying the opposite.
Well, yeah, because I never liked being full. I was always trying with my nutrition to feel empty, because if I felt empty, I felt leaner. So I really didn't listen to my hunger cues. I didn't listen. I mean, I listened to what I wanted, what I thought I wanted, and that was something completely different, because I was telling myself not to have certain stuff, and then I was just always trying to feel empty. So again, I think it's this whole, when we're talking about nutrition for your soul, your training, your well-being, I think it's really important to start listening to your body and what your hunger actually means, rather than, oh, but X social media page said to not eat blah blah, or I shouldn't eat at 8 p.m. or don't eat breakfast, or breakfast is the best meal of the day. What do you need? Like, I'm not hungry. Like, Mimi has breakfast before coming and doing a session in the morning or whatever, and I'm like, what? I can't fathom eating before 11 o'clock usually. But like, at one point I was forcing myself to eat because someone told me that that was important for my health. So I really think that you have to start paying attention to your body, but also your mind and why you're doing certain things. Like, why are you not eating past 8? Like, is that because you're listening to something that's told you if you eat past 8, it's wrong? So I really think listening is key. I'm going to get back to that tracking stuff, because I think that's really important, because I think for some people for a lot of people tracking can be useful in a particular part of your life to figure out about nutrition and where you are. But I'm going to ask Mish, I'm going to go with you. What, in terms of nutrition for yourself, what would you say you've struggled with most?
The most, it's definitely being on autopilot and not knowing what my body needed. I don't think I've ever struggled with like being overwhelmed by the advice on social media, but for me personally, coming from majority of my life coming from a binge eating disorder, I really struggled with improving my relationship with food because of that, and I didn't know when I was eating because it was my coping mechanism, and when I was eating because I needed to eat. And I that took me years to heal, and it was really scary, because I guess when you have eating disorder, you are also scared to let go of that because it becomes part of your identity.
Yeah.
So I didn't know who I was without binge eating disorder for many years, and it definitely took I guess me gaining weight and embracing that, because that was part of my healing journey, and that would be definitely a narrative, of society, that I'm being unhealthy. Whilst in reality for me that was I was becoming the healthiest I have ever been.
Yeah.
And I think context is important. I like how you said that healthy meant small, or healthy meant skinny.
Yeah.
I can definitely resonate with that. I think it's about getting clarity on what is important for you, what things mean for you, rather than kind of one advice fits to all.
Yeah. I mean, if you what would you say was the most helpful thing for you building a better relationship with food and or your body?
Giving myself permission to eat.
Yes.
Giving myself permission to eat
anything
mindfully, And it's weird because I remember in my head that time, but if I give myself permission to eat, surely that's going to contribute to my binge eating. But my binge eating was stemming from the inability to cope with emotional distress rather than me actually eating. Like, I needed food, right, to live, to survive.
Yeah.
And giving myself permission to eat actually took that pressure off completely. And I was, for the first time ever, I was able to stop when I felt full. I was able to eat when I wanted to eat.
Yeah.
And that was huge. That was huge.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was one of the big, when I came off tracking, it was like, I love crisps, right? So I'm a big crisp. I am a big crisp fan. Like chocolate.
Favorite crisps?
Oh, everyone's gonna cuss it, but Squares, the song gonna go
No,
on.
I
They're crunchy, they're salty,
Yeah.
they're legit. James cusses me every day. He's like,
I am a steak McCoy as well, but like.
oh, okay. And now a Jawatsit, the giant Watsits.
Oh, yeah. They
Yeah.
changed
Hot.
the recipe recently.
So anyways, I've done a lot of research.
Yeah.
But when I used to track, it would be like, you can't eat crisps until the weekend, right? And then everyone knows the scenario, the bowl of crisps in front of you, you go to a friend's house.
Crisps and dips.
And you
Trigger
are
food
just
for me.
all over it. I am the only one that's reaching in. But I remember it was about 6 months after I'd stopped tracking. And I'd woken up on a Monday, I'd gone to work, at the time I was working at a startup. And I remember going in and being like, I really fancy a packet of crisps. And I think it was honestly about 9:30 or 10 o'clock on a Monday morning. And normally I'd be like, it's Monday, you can't have crisps on a Monday because we're starting this health, wellness week of like eating good. And I remember eating this packet of crisps and getting about halfway through it and being like, cool, I'm actually kind of okay, leaving it. And like those scenarios, they take a while to get to. Like, it doesn't just happen overnight. It doesn't just happen 6 weeks down the line. Like, there were 6 months of events in the lead up to that. But it was exactly as Mish said, it was that letting go of understanding that the more you limit yourself,
Yes.
like the more you say no, the more the pushback is going to come.
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to train, let's say, okay, and you keep saying, oh, I don't want to train, but once you let go, once you're in the gym and you've done the warm-up and you're like, you know what, whatever happens, like if I do 2 reps and I go home, so be it. All of a sudden that changes, like that the narrative that you tell yourself instantly is alleviated by that change.
Yeah, and I think that permission to eat all foods comes under the umbrella of acceptance, of being like, I accept that I want this food, cool, I'm gonna go and eat it. And then, I mean, that really do feel like it's like a fuckboy scenario. Like, if you've got parents being like, don't date that guy, you want to date that guy. If you're like, I shouldn't date that guy, he's a dick, like, you want to date him more. It's just like, come on, like, I think the minute you can kind of go, I'm allowed, I'm giving myself the permission, you don't really, I mean, it's true. If your parents say, date the fuckboy, you're like, fuck that shit. Don't want to date him. Boring.
You're like, no, I don't want to.
Yeah. So I really do think that permission to eat all foods for your well-being, like whether you've got fat loss goals, muscle building goals, or just health goals or whatever, like that is your key number 1 place to start. I want to then kind of go on to then some myths around food and nutrition, which I think that we are all bombarded with some ideas about certain foods. Mimi, what would you say is one of like the biggest myths that you held on to? That, can I just actually say that we all kind of, us coaches, come from a disordered eating background. I've been working with clients now for 8 to 10 years. I would say 99% have all come from disordered eating backgrounds. Disordered eating doesn't have to be extreme, but just in the idea that I should, shouldn't, will I, can I, the frustration, the feelings of like, all of that stuff. I really haven't, I've honestly maybe met like 1% of my clients being where they don't come from that scenario. So, but just to give you some background, we have all gone through that kind of stuff. So Mimi, what would you say for you is this like myth that
there's so many. I really knew nothing about dieting, so I was a typical yo-yo dieter. I tried everything. I tried, Atkins, Slim Fast, diet pills, like everything to try. Like I can't even tell you a diet that I probably didn't try either. Low carb, this, that, everything. So all of those like fad diet myths. I remember in particular at one point seeing an Instagram post saying abs are made in the kitchen, and I was like, And that was like a
So what did you do
spiral.
in the kitchen?
The clean
Yeah.
eating.
Oh my god, trigger.
And that like spiraled me
Got the
into a
sweats.
binge eating problem as well. So like Monday to Friday, I'd eat salad and greens, and at work I'd be like, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake, just don't look at the cake is not there, it's fine. And then the weekend come and I'd be like, like everything I could eat until Monday came, because it's Sunday night, I knew Monday was coming, and that would be it again. No more cake again for a whole week. Sat there like and like it's a vicious cycle to try and get out of. And I remember also like when you're saying like, listen to your body, but I remember if someone back then told me to listen to my body, I'd be like, what the fuck does that mean? Like it's like so hard to get yourself into like a position where you can then go off hunger cues. And I think for me, actually, tracking was a good middle ground in between like that extreme dieting and learning about nutrition to a point where I could make informed decisions. And I'm not gonna lie, that got quite neurotic for a while as well. Like I was pretty much like weighing every single gram of rice that I ate as well. But like the process was much better to track my food at that point and to be able to eat all foods. Then there was no limits than to have no idea about food at all and to what I should or should not be eating.
And I would say in terms of tracking, because people are like, we are here if we don't enforce anything on anyone. If someone wants to track, sure, and if they don't, cool. And if they've got goals where this would help. The thing I would say is if you are going to track, making sure that you have some support and guidance around that, because I think there's a difference between tracking and trying not to eat too much. Like if you're on, say, something like Fitness Pal, it goes, if you put in your calories, or it tells you your calories, which are always generally very low, and then you on one day go over those calories and it goes red, like that's a trigger for me. Like just seeing red writing, like fuck, I'm in the red, fuck, like what have I done? So I think having am I being the lion? So I think having some guidance to be able to encourage you to look at your overall nutrition as a big picture and not daily is going to be key. And also to encourage you to enhance rather than think about what you shouldn't have and take away. So really, when I get clients to track, if that's something that they want to do, we are looking at enhancing their nutrition. What is it, if we look at your diet, like that you're not having, that would actually enhance your lifestyle and your training and your well-being? And generally,
Can I
go.
Just about tracking as well, like going back to the squats, like someone's saying that it's bad for your knees, right? Okay, yeah, sure, if you're doing it like that, then yeah, it's bad for your knees. It can be the same, can be applied to tracking, right? There are obviously not so, or maybe not so obviously, ways of doing it that are more
beneficial.
And
Beneficial
aligned with what you're trying to achieve. As you said, you put into Fitness Pal what your weight and your goal is, it will automatically give you 1,200 calories, and that's a bad start. So if someone's got an experience with that, then of course that they're not going to get along with tracking, because that's a ridiculous number and they should never give you that. So
and to give you some background on that, because I remember asking, I think it must have been a coach of mine years ago, why was that not the number that we were all searching for, that you get told? Essentially, the energy that we use to just breathe, wake up and fart, as an example, it's generally between...
Some use more calories doing that than others.
It's generally between 1,200 and 1,600, dependent on a bunch of things, muscle, height, etc., gender and stuff. But so if a diet company essentially has an agenda and tells you 1,200 calories, you're going to be in a deficit if you stick to that. Now, the best thing for diet companies about that is you can't stick to that, and therefore you do it for a bit and you're like, yeah, then you can't do it, you feel like you're shit and wrong for not being able to stick to it, and then you'll go back to it again at some point, hence billion-dollar industry. It will just churn out shit information to make you feel shit, to make you come back to, I'll do the diet, as an example. But also, What did you say as well about the 1,200 calories?
Well,
Oh, just you're fucked from the.
yeah, and then, you know, if you're only going to eat, you know, like just 3 Pop-Tarts a day that take you up to 2,000 calories, then that's also not going to like help you with your tracking situation either. So there's just a lot more to it than just tracking your calories.
Yeah, there is so much context, and what I would say as well, if people are looking to ask themselves like, what does listening to my body mean? You know, my general start point is trying to figure out hunger. So for me and my clients, I will give like a hunger scale of what, like 1 might be like you're so fucking hungry that you're gonna faint and you can't get up. 10 being so full that you like are sick because you've eaten so much. And there being a scale, and because every day it's different and stuff, but generally what I find is if you start using that scale and you don't go past 4 to 1, that's kind of like a nice place. Like 3 might be like belly rumble as an example. You know, it will give you details on the scale, and when we get into detail, that will look different for everyone as well. But you know, if you don't go past 4, you're not gonna get to that like point where you're so fucking hungry that you're gonna eat everything. A piece of paper I just stuck in my mouth. So it's like, you know, getting to that point. Okay, I'm hungry. I'm gonna listen to that, and then I'm gonna eat something, and then also like not going past maybe 7 on that hunger tracker, where like you're like so full you are starting to feel a bit sick and ill, etc. So finding like a middle ground, and then allowing yourself to sometimes end up at the 1 and sometimes end up at the 10, and giving yourself some compassion, because every day is different, and it's a practice.
That's the big thing. Every day is different. I just think we all get stuck in the mentality of, well, I wasn't hungry this time yesterday, so why am I today? But like, there's so many factors that have changed in between that. Like, you might have trained later in the day on the Monday, you might have been up a little bit earlier on the Tuesday morning. Like, it's so difficult to be like, but this time a week ago I wasn't hungry. So you've just got, in that respect, it's like understanding on a day-to-day basis. Yes, you might eat the same things, but it might be in a slightly different order at a slightly different time. Like, I sometimes have the protein shake, right? Sometimes I have it straight away when I come in first thing in the morning, because I'm like, wow, I woke up really fucking hungry.
Yeah.
Other days it will get to midday and I'm like, oh, I should probably eat sometime around about now. So like, you've got to be kind to yourself in that, like, I know we want structure, I know we want routine, but when it comes to your bodies and hunger cues, like, that isn't always applicable. Like, you need to kind of like feel, like, if you're leading into a feeling that you're like, having a bit of a shit day, I'm going to take my lunch a little bit earlier, because right now I could do with a bit of headspace, and then maybe I'll feel a bit better in the afternoon, and then I can have my snack then. Just take it as it is, journal, write about it, maybe have a think about it, speak to someone about it. I know that if I ever voice something, it becomes a bit more real, because I've said it out loud, and then I sit down the next day and go.
And as you said, that's not even just daily, that's monthly, that's yearly, that's over different phases of your life as well. So that's just part of life, isn't it?
Like, I thought I ate a lot at uni, but looking back, I was probably living off like a bowl of pasta a day. But at the time I was like, wow, we're really eating a lot here.
Yeah.
Whereas like these days, like, you know, it different seasons. Danny's had a baby, like at different points in your life, like you will be in a different phase, and it's okay. And we're also saying another thing is like, I used to eat, like I was saying, I used to eat these pies, because so veggie and vegan options obviously have come on a long way. So back a few years, you really didn't have that many options. But I used to eat this one pie from Rachel's because it was the only veggie option. I really fucking didn't like it, but it was about the only thing that I could get. So fast forward like 3 months, someone was like, oh, like, have you seen this one? And I looked at it, and like, I was like, why have I not been eating this one the whole time? Like, it was so much better. But it's understanding that you can also change what you eat as well. You don't need to eat the same thing. Like, I'll sometimes be so sick of these protein bars. I'm like, oh, could not eat another chocolate protein bar, even if I tried. So then I'll just go and get a regular chocolate bar. Just got can't eat another protein bar. Gonna have some chocolate.
Favorite chocolate bar?
Oh, I'm not really a massive fan. A dime.
Okay. Maybe. Mini dimes from IKEA. Yes.
Galaxy.
I'm scared for my teeth.
Yeah, dime.
Can I ask, Sharia, what would you say is something that you would encourage people to add into their nutrition, their diet? When I say diet, for their well-being
So
and training?
for me, my biggest, as you said, like we've all kind of had some kind of eating disorder variations in our lives, and for me, like I would say I was a carb queen, still am, love
Yes.
my carbs. I am a croissant
Connoisseur.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's croissant.
So where would I get the best croissant in Clapham?
Okay, for me, hands down, Sainsbury's do the best croissants.
What?
Oh, just 'cause
Sainsbury's,
you'd say
personally.
Fret on croissant.
No, it's not. But I'm also a plain. I don't really like to add the fancy unless I'm really feeling it.
fancy.
I'm not
No,
sure we
it's
can
about
different.
it.
Just like a
It's
magic
fine.
croissant.
Well, if I could,
So
I'd
wait, I
be
wanna
in
get
Paris
to-
having croissants, but I can't.
Sorry, yeah.
Back to what I was saying. So for me, like my biggest kind of game changer was really upping my protein. And making sure that I was hitting my protein target as much as I possibly can, if not like vigorously every single day. And it's still something that sometimes goes up and down for me. Like it's not every day. Like we lead very busy lives, so sometimes I'm great at being able to like either prep some meals or have some things that I'm definitely going to be able to have to hit that target. But when you're running around London, you're not always going to be able to like calculate everything that you're putting in your system. So it doesn't always happen every time, but when I have like a good month of being able to really track my protein, like my progress is so good. And I feel so much better, I feel stronger, I feel like I can actually get through my workouts. I don't feel as tired the next day. I definitely feel way more nourished. So like my biggest kind of tip would be to really check in on your protein intake. And out of everything, kind of making that your main goal, and then kind of varying around the others, your fat and your carbohydrates. But also, I think being super intuitive about yourself and being, I guess it is about that permission sort of thing of being able to turn around and say like, it's okay if I go out at the weekends and have loads of drinks, eat lots of food, see lots of people. I don't have to wake up on a Monday morning and go, oh my gosh, I have to get back into the gym, or I have to start eating well right this second. Otherwise I'm gonna die, I don't know. I think it's really important to remind yourself that it's okay, and you can give yourself that like, oh, this is gonna be a down period, and that's okay, I'm gonna get back to it when I get back to it. And feeling good and confidence, I think for me it was definitely about feeling confident in my body, and in my own skin, and not feeling judged too much by other people around me. I came from a dance background, and like for years it was like, don't have a bum, don't have boobs, have a tiny waist, don't have thighs. I have all of those things. Not the boobs, but so I also went to all girls school, and like there were lots of girls who were very skinny. So I always had this mentality that I needed to be skinny, and I would never have thought like if I just really considered the stuff that I was doing, dancing for like 8 hours a day, then maybe going to the gym and actually doing a workout. If I had actually just thought about what I was putting in, the nutrients that I was putting in, especially my protein, my progression would have been way better. I would have felt differently. I would have looked exactly how I would imagine myself to look. Like the legs aren't going to go anywhere, the bum's not going to go anywhere, but at least I know I would be capable to do what it is that I need to do, which is dance on the stage for however many hours. So I really encourage myself, my clients, anyone that I know to really just think about like getting in your protein and being forgiving of yourself when you don't hit your targets. Like it's okay, it's not going to be the end of the world. And also talking about it. I think we have a habit of not necessarily wanting to talk about our nutrition because we're like, someone's going to judge me. If I came in and said every day, yeah, I had a croissant this morning, like some people might be like, oh my gosh, like you shouldn't be having that, you're like, oh, you should be doing this, that, and the other. But actually, it's okay, like it fits in with my macros, it makes me feel good, I'm not going to stress about it. If I don't follow through, then that's my day, and I'm okay with that. So yeah.
And I think that's about intentionally, because I really don't believe, there is kind of a narrative, I think, and I think it's a good one. The anti-diet narrative is very good in terms of being like, fuck you diet culture, absolutely. But I think what we assume that means is fuck it culture then. It's like, fuck it, I'm just gonna eat whatever I want, but actually, that doesn't mean that actually eating for your well-being isn't intentional. Like, it doesn't feel natural to eat the recommended amount of protein, because that's not the way in which society kind of like encourages us to eat, especially as women. So it does take intention, and intention is not the same as obsession. Just because you are saying, right, I'm gonna intentionally get, and what does enough protein look like? We have nutrition guides coming, so you all can message us and we can give you one, but essentially it's 0.7 grams per pound of weight that you are, if you ever want to take that bit of information. But you could look at that as like a portion, like a chicken fillet, a fish fillet, a can of beans, you know, and making sure that you're having that 3 to 4 times a day. That's a really nice place to start. It's like 25 grams, 3 to 4 times a day. But to be intentional with getting enough protein, getting enough vegetables, getting enough water is not the same as being like, I must have or mustn't have. You have flexibility around it. If one day you aren't intentional with your protein, that's okay too, because you're human. But if you can just focus on intention, and also intention with the foods that light up your soul, you can be like, I really do think there's a difference between having a croissant because you intentionally, I love a fucking croissant, I like the Sainsbury's ones, I don't like the Pret ones. So if you're just gonna walk into Pret and mindlessly get a croissant and eat it along the road and you haven't even noticed you're eating it, that's not intentional. You're not enjoying that. That's not ideal for your well-being. But going to Sainsbury's specifically to get that croissant and then take it and get here and sit and eat it slowly, mindfully, that's intentional. The difference between being intentional with your food, the stuff that's great for your body, and the stuff and training and the stuff that's great for your soul, I really think is a massive game changer. And I think we're really scared to intentionally eat, especially for our soul, because we think that that means we're going to intentionally eat pizza for lunch, ice cream for dinner, and never eat a vegetable again. That's not true. If I ask a client, what's your ideal day of eating? They don't say pizza for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They throw in some veg, they have a bit of protein, and they throw in a cake. You know what I mean? Like, if you really think about what you actually want to eat, I don't believe you're all gonna say a bunch of food that's non-nutritious for your body. I think there'll be a mix, and I really think learning to trust that that mix is healthy and good and well for you and your soul and body. Like, I think that trust is a really important thing to try and focus on and learn.
It's a mindset thing, right? Like, it really is, it does come down to, if you look at your nutrition as, what can I be adding back in to make it better, rather than this constant cycle which we're programmed to believe, which is, what can I take away? What is it that I'm eating that needs to be removed? Because that's when that becomes a really tough space to live in, because you're not going to stay in it forever, right? Like, you can't hate yourself into change, but if you do things that feel good, that give you, so like, picking up on what you've just said and what Sharia said, like, if you focus on adding more protein and don't worry about anything else, if one thing you took away was, okay, the girls have said, get more protein, and you go to the supermarket and you're like, okay, this looks like a reasonable amount of protein, I'm going to pick this, this, and this, right? And then the next day you go in and you do a shop and you're like, okay, yesterday was good, we're going to go again, we're going to go pick one more thing that's got a little bit more protein in there. All of a sudden, like, your focus is on adding in, rather than going to the supermarket being like, fuck, well, I can't have that, that, and that, so what does that leave me with? Because then that's just depressing. Like, that's not gonna help you. And all of a sudden you're in that mindset of like, well, what can I have? Rather than, oh my God, I can have everything. I can have what I want, but what is it that I want? Like, you just then start to pick up on, like when you bring something home from the shops, right? You bring it home, you try it on, you're like, oh, I love this new jumper, put it away. And then over time, there's always gonna be a jumper that you're like, you know what? That doesn't actually serve me anymore, I don't want it anymore. And you get rid of it, you take it to the charity shop. It's the same with food habits. Like, slowly the habits that don't serve you, like the binge eating, like a chocolate bar 3 times over on a Friday because you haven't had it all week, that if you get rid of that slowly over time will shift
And you get rid of that by enhancing and adding.
by adding other things rather than constantly taking.
Yeah.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So, like, I thought it might be helpful as well, because I still do this with myself, but how that looks practically as well. It's like, well, how do I add more vegetables in? And for me, this has been something recently that I've been trying to do, so it's a good one. Because I fell off the vegetable bandwagon. I was all I ate was chicken goujons, and I was like, fuck, I need some greens in my life. Whereas before, like, I was overly obsessed, right? So I was like, okay, let me try some things. I'll do what I used to do. I'll tray bake some, like, mixed vegetables. That lasted a week. So I was back to my chicken goujons. I was like, okay, let's try something else. Like, but same thing. And then the next week I just bought loads of spinach because I was like, okay, you can add spinach to everything, right? That also didn't work. So I was like, okay, let's try something else. So now I'm like, I've been buying like, those frozen vegetables in a bag that I put in the microwave. That works.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, okay, all right. Been doing it for like ages now, and I'm like, finally.
Keep it simple.
Yeah, exactly. Keep it simple. Like, I never thought I'd be the guy that bought vegetables in a bag, but here I am, and it's working for me. I would never have done that 10 years
that's
ago.
Healthier than not having the
Exactly.
vegetable.
But like, sometimes you just gotta try some different things that might actually work for you. Like, it's not like, oh, like vegetables are so hard to get into it. It's like you just need to find a way of doing it. And like, even in one of these habit books, I read one of the examples was just chopping the vegetables. Someone got one of those things that you slice them with, and that was enough to make them eat vegetables.
Yeah. Or I just buy
It
chopped
could be
veg a lot of the
anything.
time.
Yeah.
I really,
Exactly, that's what I mean. Yeah.
Also, don't
Take
worry
out
about
everything.
frozen either. I know some people get a bit weird.
Yeah.
But frozen is just as good, or
Yeah.
if not better than on the shelf. If you didn't.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Absolutely. I used to have a
Frozen
client
meats.
that said I don't eat vegetables because I only like them if I've got sauce on them. I'll only eat them if I've got salt or sauce on them, and that's unhealthy. So I won't eat the veg. And honestly, like, you're better to add in the veg with the sauce and salt, if not at all. So sometimes, you can kind of get into this like, well, I shouldn't have the salt, or I won't have, So again, it's bigger picture stuff. And I'm gonna kind of like round it up a little bit, and then you can ask some questions. But one of the things I think is really important regarding like that permission to eat and that stuff, and another takeaway is that whole like good, bad food. I really think if you take out that label, good and bad food, because what does it really mean? As an example, my mum was really ill, and I wasn't, it was either I wasn't eating, or I would just go to the petrol station, have a sandwich and a pack of crisps. That was kind of my choices at the time. Now, it was healthier for my well-being to have the sandwich and pack of crisps, but definitely at one point in my life I would have said a sandwich and a pack of crisps was bad. But now I know that as a whole I have to think about the season I'm in and where I'm at and stuff. It's better to nourish myself in some way than in another way, whether it's non-nutritious, I would say, less nutrient-dense food and nutrient-dense food, right? But I know that health is about the ideas I have about food and the bigger picture and the yearly thing and the daily and the meals all together, rather than just, oh, this meal isn't nutritious. So I think if you take out that good and bad scenario, and that kind of goes as well back to the tracking malarkey. I had a client that showed me a couple of days of her tracking. One day she was like, oh, this was a really good day, and then she was like, oh, don't look at that day, it was a really bad day. And when I looked at it, the good day was really low calorie and really low carb, hence why it was low calorie. There wasn't much fiber, so her pooing must have been bad, and there wasn't much protein. And we were lifting, we were training. She was asking to get stronger, she was asking to grow muscle, she wanted to get toned. So we really needed the muscle, and we really needed enough calories and energy to actually perform the lifts to her best ability. And then I looked at the day she said was a bad day, and it was over 2,000 calories, and immediately for her, as soon as it was in the number 2, it was bad. But that day, it was like, and I asked her to track her hunger and stuff alongside her calorie tracking, and also like her feelings and stuff, and she was full, and she had energy that day, right? I asked her to track her energy. So for me, you're full and you've got energy, so there's a good sign, like that's great, you're having a good day here. And she'd hit her protein, and she'd hit her fiber. So for me, it was like, you're saying you're having, that was a bad day, but for in terms of nourishment and in terms of how she actually felt physically, it was a fucking great day. And the day where it was all, you know, low, she had low energy and she couldn't lift as well. So I really think you gotta like take a look at what you're deciding is good and bad and ask yourself why. Because generally that day looked bad for her because it was over 2,000 calories and she'd had carbs. When essentially, actually, in terms of how her body felt and her progress she would make on that day was better. So we will have a nutrition guide that will give some more like details, some more practical stuff to take away. But essentially, like our take homes are enhance your diet, don't take away from it. Give yourself
Adding back in. Give yourself permission to eat all foods and don't label them good or bad. And tracking can be useful to understand where you're at. And if you don't want to track food, track your feelings around food. That will really, really help. So, let's open the floor. Anyone got any questions? Anything?
don't be shy to ask us. Yeah.
So I, much like most people here, probably have tried every single diet under the sun, and like for I think my parents and my partner's parents and that sort of generation, I think they're still trying to do like 800 calorie diets and things like that, and I find that quite triggering.
Yeah.
And I guess my question's less around like that, but how you approach when you're sat around the table having a conversation about that. And all you're thinking is, I'm not a nutritionist, but I know 800 calories is not enough for like a child.
Yeah.
Like, what are the sort of tips you'd give for like, I mean, do you say anything? Do you just bite your tongue?
Do you say anything?
Yeah.
My sister's here. I mean, I can't help myself.
Like on the extreme level, like
Yeah.
800 calories, like.
Yeah.
Not like if you're doing like any diet, but it's that sort of extreme level.
Oh, yeah. There's the 5-2 diets.
Yeah, look, I do say something. My first kind of question generally is to ask people like, cool, how are you feeling on that? Because if you really do ask how someone's feeling, you know, especially in terms of health, like my husband said to me, the internet says that I should be 20 kg lighter, right? Like that's healthier, right? So, and I was like, well, to do that, you know, what are you gonna have to do? And he was like, well, you know, probably really be in the deficit, but actually like I want to get stronger, is that gonna be the best thing for me? My thing was like, what's healthy? So is that person eating 800 calories got a good relationship with food? Are they thinking good things? Are they feeling great in themselves? Have they got energy to go train? Are they able to pick up their kid? Are they able to go play? Are they able to go walk for an hour and a half a day? Can they go hiking? Like there are so many other questions that for me would lead to, well, that would be more healthy than just I'm eating less, so therefore I'm getting smaller. So I really think that asking how someone feels is kind of rather than, by the way, it's bad, because I don't believe any person on 800 calories will say, I feel fucking great, I feel well. So it's a nice in to then kind of ask, well, what about thinking about these other ideas of health and what that might look like to you, feel like to you?
The older generation, so like, it is hard. So like, I feel like our mothers grew up in a time where they were expected to diet and to do it silently. Like no one spoke about it. It was that you just ate less because women at that point were told that you need to be smaller to be whatever, right? And then I think that we've come in as millennials, like on that cusp where we had magazines showing us this woman at this size and this woman at this size, like look which one looks crap, and you're like, that's so damaging. And so we've all come out of what are like disordered patterns of eating. And so my mum as well, like has a very Greek mentality around the way that she eats, and it's really interesting to watch her as a yo-yoer go up and down and up and down, and I always will be like, okay, well, like let's break it down, like how would you eat for the day if I wasn't involved? And I think at one point she was saying, oh, you know, I'm getting bigger and I don't understand why. And then we figured out that she was putting 4 tablespoons of olive oil all over her salad. And I was like, now the issue isn't the olive oil, but it's that you don't understand. Because she would be like, I'm eating rocket, like salad for lunch with chicken breast, and nothing's happening. But it's because you aren't actually like listening to your plate. Like she would then, I was like, oh, just like, let's go and see how you eat for the day, right? And it's just, when I tackled that problem at the table, I was like, but the issue isn't that you're eating less, it's that you're not eating anything that's keeping you full. But it is, I find I get really triggered by my mum, so we tend to just like have a conversation around it, and I say, that's not how I'm going to eat, but if you guys want to eat like that, that's absolutely fine. Like, this is what I'm going to do. But it nearly always ends in an argument and someone storms off, and it's usually me. So.
I don't say anything. Like,
I just-
if my mum wanted my advice, she'd ask me, and she's never asked me.
Yeah.
She's just given me statements. I've lost weight. I'm like, okay.
100%. It's
You know, like, she'll want my help. Like, and it's probably
they're just
frustrating.
unfortunately, generationally, we are all programmed differently. Like, you'll look at Gen Z and they'll probably look at all of us and be like, why do you guys have such issues with food? Like, it's really not that hard, right? Because they've grown up in a more body positivity, like people on social media are more sort of, like, we like to think anyways, are
Depends
a
on
bit
your
more
echo
well-rounded
chamber.
at the moment, I
Yeah.
think, right? Whereas, like, unfortunately, we were, when Thinspo was the tagline and that, and Terran Chick and all of that, so,
Taking a comeback.
yeah, well,
Do you know,
yeah.
it's such a hard conversation because I've got
It's-
like even my friends like do the same thing with me. You know, like I've got one friend that was like, "Oh yeah, you know what? I'm gonna start Joe Wicks, and this is gonna be the thing that changes it," knowing full well what I do, and like I don't know if she consumes the content that we put out there or not, but and I'm like, okay, like I'm just trying not to say anything because I'm like, okay, fine, whatever, like you want to do. Like I've even worked with her one-to-one before, like she gets it, right? Or obviously she doesn't. But but then like I had to really like understand what she was trying to get from that conversation as well, because then I just put my foot in it because I didn't say enough, and then she said, oh, like I feel like you're not supporting me, and I was like, oh, like and then I felt so bad because I do want to support her.
Yeah.
So it's such a
It's a triggering topic.
yeah, you really can't, like it's so hard to navigate that.
So, in terms of adding stuff in and
Yeah.
protein, taking what Sharia says, any tips, and that goes for anyone in the room, on protein-dense food that aren't protein bars? I can have the occasional protein bar, but I find it tastes a bit chalky, and I'm not big on chocolate bars anyway,
Right.
so...
Just one idea.
Big on that.
So this is where Danny and I and Nilu were all talking about this yesterday about like clear whey protein, either flavoured or basically it's like kind of like a juice drink, but it's got protein in it. And that for me was quite a big game changer because not every time I want to like consume my protein via like
A shake
a shake or a bar. Specifically the bars, because like after a while my teeth are like, fuck off. Like literally, like, you can't put another one in your mouth. So I find that's a little bit more accessible to me personally, because it takes that away. And like if I'm on the go, I'm not going to be running down the road with a chicken breast in my mouth, like
Yeah.
like that's just not going to happen.
I've done that though.
I used to
do it.
carry a can of tuna in my bag.
Yeah, the random stuff. So I would highly recommend having something that allows you to get your protein in without you having to jump for a bar or a shake that is gonna make you feel like, oh, I'm putting sugar in my system, not necessarily because it's bad, but like because after a while for me it just becomes a little bit too much. And then you can vary that up as well by supplementing with like some actual snacks of like, I mean,
Refrigerated.
yeah, I fucking love refrigerators, like so good.
I break it down by meal. So I would just look at your breakfast, I would look at your lunch, I
Yeah.
would look at your dinner,
Bigger meals.
and be like,
Yeah.
let's say you're gonna have chicken for dinner. But again, I would also ask what, like, if you're veggie, vegan, whatever, or not. But
And
break
dependent
it down.
on your social economic
Yeah, yeah,
status,
exactly,
you
like-
know.
Are you gonna eat chicken breast in the evening? If that's a yes, instead of like the one portion, maybe have 1.5, right? But on the go, like yogurts can also be quite handy as like a mid-morning snack, like that kind of thing. There's also some granolas out there. I just get the standard Sainsbury's one, and I just literally put some of that with yogurt, and I roughly know that that's about 20 grams. You've got to experiment a little bit,
Yeah.
and like there's not really a set way, but I tried to break it down in how can I add a bit more into breakfast, a bit more into lunch, and a bit more into dinner.
I did one. Sorry. Go on. I thought this the other day. This is literally just a meal idea, but like sometimes I'll have a really spicy soup and then like a bowl of Greek yogurt next to it. So like you need the yogurt for the soup, and you get 20 grams of protein from yogurt, and then you've got your soup, and I quite like that.
I will say, like, I was vegan for 5 years, so mate, any little bit of protein you could get from anything, and like I discovered so many things. Like, add a cup of peas to every freaking dinner, and you're like, yes, 7 grams of protein, I'll take it. So like, there's certain things, broccoli. Look, you're not gonna get 20 grams of broccoli in a sitting, but you add it in, you get another 5 grams here. Whole grain toast. Like, I'll have toast for, like, you got 8 grams there. A bagel, you got 10 grams there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of foods people think, that's not a protein food, but like, you got protein in the bread and stuff. So sometimes it's just about making that meal a bit bigger, but you know, adding in an extra 5 grams for each time you eat that day, like, that's an extra 20 grams a day without having to have a 20-gram protein bar.
Edamame are so high protein.
Yeah,
I
very
just throw
good.
them in Sainsbury's. They do like a little packet, so it's like a grab and go one.
Yeah.
And I grab like 4 of those, and for every whatever meal it is, I'll just put a whole packet of that in.
Yeah. I'm gonna say last question because we're running over, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do you have any advice for people who are kind of like addicted to like getting on the scales and like measuring themselves to that? Because I know that's for me, it's been something in the past, and some people say like, oh, instead of getting on the scales, why don't you use a tape measure and measure yourself, and because obviously when you're trying to, you know, lift and gain weight, gain muscle, you're also gaining weight. Is there anything that you suggest, like, is just maybe making a journal and things like that about how you feel? Like, what would you?
My thing isn't, I don't believe it has to be taking the scale away necessarily. I think it's about getting support and guidance about learning like what feelings are coming up for you on the scale. So journaling, like, that sounds really fucking wanky, but honestly, just go and journal. I feel like it would change your lives. But journaling how you're feeling around the scale and what ideas you're having, what thoughts you've attached to this idea that the scale means. I've asked clients before, because I've had clients say, I'm not going to not weigh. Like, I have to weigh myself, even if I encourage them not to. So I'm not going to just not work with them. I'm going to work with that. So my idea is like, journal what you're feeling before you weigh and journal what you're feeling after. Like, how's that affecting you? What thoughts are making you feel a particular way? So sometimes it's just being a bit curious as to what you're doing and why you're thinking things. Another thing would be to say, step away from any measurements and really focus. There's like some research at the moment about if you are training to get stronger, that it really takes your preoccupation. You get less occupied with the body checking and stuff like that, and it's so much better for your body image. So train to get stronger, and it will take away from this idea of like,
scientifically proven.
It's scientific rather than training just to look a particular way. That's not to say it's not in the background of your head. You know, look, I feel like I've got a great relationship with my body, with food now and stuff, but I'm also a bit like, wouldn't mind growing my butt a bit more. Like, I don't believe that's absolute negative, but I think taking away the like intensity of this is why I'm doing something. So
just knowing what's the scale actually means.
And asking,
like, it's your gravity pulling you towards the ground. It has no idea how much water you're retaining, how much fat you've got, how much muscle you've got. Like, exactly. Like,
that's all you are.
Yeah. It's literally data.
But if you're emotionally tied to it, then that in itself is something that, like, over time, you've just got to break that barrier down. Like, that's the hardest thing. In that, I had a client that was obsessed with the scale, and every Monday I would get a text and be like, oh my god, it's awful, it's absolutely awful, like, I've gone backwards. And I literally was like, okay, let's go through this, like, why? And the minute that you go through everything that we've just said, did you eat particularly late last night? Have you had a poo this morning? Like, when did you weigh yourself? Did you have a glass of water before? Like,
slept.
And then all of a sudden, as soon as you speak the rational out, they're like, yeah, you're right. It was just, and also that's just one day. Like, if I was to tell you that your goal weight was whatever you wanted it, like your body that you want, like that physical appearance that you want was X amount, you wouldn't give a shit.
Yeah, I think this is a thing. If you are talking about aesthetic goals and stuff, a lot of the time in the past when I've worked with people on that track, they might show me an idea of a body they might particularly be going for, and often I'm like, well, that's probably 10 kg heavier than you think it is, and you're trying to seek this, but then that's not going to get you to the progress you want anyway. So a lot of the time it's like learning about letting go of an idea that you think you have about the scale anyway. But I do think if you really are weighers, and if that's something that you're looking at, I take the practical note of don't listen to the scale on one day to the next week. Take a weekly average. So, you know, one of the things I would say that I do with some clients, if their head's in the right place and they haven't got an overly bad relationship with food, I would obviously refer them out if they had eating disorder. But I would say track for 2 weeks. And track the scale for 2 weeks and eat to your hunger, and then look at what that looks like. Because I'm telling you, again, I promise you 99% of clients that I've asked to do that, they go, oh, on average I actually stayed the same weight and I actually ate what I was wanting to eat for hunger. And that was like such a realization for people. And then when we look at that 2 weeks ago, and if you'd have weighed on Wednesday to Wednesday, it looked like you gained 3 pounds, but on average you averaged out. So if you are in that, you know, ballpark, but in terms of thinking about your health overall and your well-being, you have to really ask yourself, is weighing yourself helping towards your health and your well-being? 9 times out of 10, it's making you think about food in a way and have a bad relationship. It's making you not eat as much. It's making you think, oh, I shouldn't. So really, like when you're thinking about getting stronger and trying to build confidence, which is going to really help in your overall training and strength mentality, the scale isn't going to be a factor for like how you're actually feeling. Like really start listening to your body. Start tracking your feelings, start tracking your training, and build the confidence and strength there, and leave the other stuff behind. And really, like honestly, I would say do that for 3 months. Like enhance, give yourself permission to eat, track your feelings, track your workouts, stop weighing for 3 months, and all of that stuff. And like, this is part of our sales at the moment. It's like, we guarantee you will feel stronger, you will feel better, like you will feel more confident. And you know, if someone comes to us and says that they didn't, and I said, have you done all these things that we're recommending? They haven't done those things. So give yourself like the permission to like release the idea of what you think health is and what food should be and what your body should look like, and really try and just tap into, I know it sounds woo-woo, but just tap into like how you're really feeling. And it's not woo-woo, we love it. But okay, well then yeah, I hope that you've got some takeaways from all of that today. I really, really hope that we encourage you to just focus on feeling your best, more so than anything else. And know that we're here. Like, we're here online. We hope that the content we put out, I'm not a very concise person, I'm really trying to be better. Hopefully you're getting some nuggets and the content that we put out is useful. If you've got any questions and you want to ask us, like DM us, send us an email. We have got 8 spots opening in January, and that will be our only spots until later on in the year. If it's something that you're thinking about, if you've thought about joining us, you can talk to our current members and ask them. I think they'll say good things about us. But we'll be onboarding people sort of the first week of Jan and starting like the next 12-week block the 9th of January. So you guys have first dibs. We've got a wait list of about 60 people right now. You have first dibs. So if you really do want to secure your spot, let us know and the spot will be yours. We would love to have you. Thank you so much for coming today. Like, we really appreciate it. It's our first kind of like proper event. I know it's your whole morning, so we really appreciate your time. Could we potentially ask to do a reel with you?
That's why we actually, really wanted to
This
get
is all it was about, was one reel.
Yeah.
My sister's going to try and direct us, It might take a
Who do you
second,
want
a
at the
couple of
front?
goes. Someone taller.
Someone tall.
We're literally gonna do is stand in a line behind each other and then
don't
we're
have that
gonna
much time.
Yeah.
With the black belt.
well,
Don't
yeah.
we have two different lines down behind them. So you see how that's one person? So we have two people standing and
So we get two lines. Sorry, we do two lines.
So
We do one of these.
stand.
All the tall people behind me. And all the small people behind me.
We're building it from that same time. Right, guys, two lines.
Everyone will be
They're not there anymore.
Yeah.
So we're going to show you how to go down.
So come and have a look at the video.
This is what we are channeling, okay? But two lines instead of one.
So we're going to basically be in a line. As soon as you see one person go, you'll go opposite. You go the opposite way. Is everyone ready? So the girls will be at the front and you'll all be behind and we'll go, go. And you just literally fan out.
Okay, so
Yeah,
you'll be the left.
simple.
All right, right. Oh, so we'll two lines. This side's going to go,
We all have to go right.
and then they go to the other side.
So the left line's going to go left and the right line's going to go right.
Yeah.
I've already done lunch.
Sorry, watch out.
Can you? I know you didn't sign up for this, alright? But we really do appreciate
So
it.
you've got to be tight.
Be tight, be
Yeah.
tight. So get in a line. So yeah, if you're on the right, you're gonna go. Myself.
And I guess people
And look at me.
Danny will be at the front.
Oh yeah, because yeah, sorry. So that's okay.
Yes.
Just trying to make it look a bit bigger.
Ideal.
Basically, I'm just gonna. Have you got the camera on my phone? I've got mine, but I'll find yours.
We'll do it twice.